I will report this bill without amendment presently. Members, we now turn to the Environment Canterbury Temporary Commissioners and Improved Water Management Amendment Bill. And the question is that Part 1 stand part. The Honourable Ruth Dyson.
And thank you very much for the opportunity to speak in this bill. I have to say at the start that I cannot recall any legislation that has enraged my electorate as much as this. It sort of beggars belief, really, that in this day and age we have a government that wanders into our region and says, we don't like what your regional council are doing. They're not allocating enough water to the irrigators. Some of their performance standards aren't very good. We're going to get rid of them and we're going to appoint commissioners. That was bad enough, Mr. Chairman, and thousands of people who had never before gone onto the street to protest marched against the removal of Canterbury's right to vote in a democratic elected regional council voting. So that was bad enough, Mr. Chairman. We, perhaps foolishly, believed the word of the Honourable Dr. Nick Smith at the time. Now, some people might laugh and say, well, fancy that, but no, I understand your cynicism, but I am still of the view that when a Member of Parliament makes a public statement about something as important as citizens' right to vote, that all of us should be able to believe their word. And I don't care what party they are, I would really like to think that we should be able to trust their word. So what Nick Smith said to Canterbury was this: whatever the circumstances, the next regional council elections in Canterbury will take place no later than the elections scheduled for late 2013. Those are the very words, an exact quote from the Honourable Dr. Nick Smith, who of course at the time was Minister of Local Government. We believed him. We thought it was bad enough that we were having our vote taken off us for 2 years, but we thought, well, come 2013, we will get our right to vote back again. Then we have a new minister, a Cantabrian, came along. I remember the first time he came to the Select Committee. The Honourable Nick Smith was at the Select Committee as a member during that time. We asked him about the quite tense relationship between local governments and the minister. And David Carter, been in the job 5 minutes, said to the Select Committee, which included Nick Smith, he said, oh, that was under the previous minister. Now the relationships are really good. Talk about embarrassing and whacking your colleague in front of other party representatives at the Select Committee. I was gobsmacked. So anyway, along rides David Carter, Canterbury Member of Parliament, and he said, no, blow that. There's still not enough water allocated to the irrigators, and I am going to keep the loss of vote going for another 3 years. So now we get this absolute nonsense, abuse of power, disgraceful blemish on the face of our parliamentary law. The Environment Canterbury Temporary Commissioners and Improved Water Management Amendment Bill, well, actually, what it is let's get the water through to the irrigators so they can put dairy farms all through Canterbury and South Canterbury. When they have done that to our satisfaction, we'll give Canterbury people the right to vote. Well, this is going to be the downfall of this government in our region. People are so angry about it, on top of all the other things that have upset people in our region. This is the crowning glory. Mr. Chairman, I just want to stress that point, though, that what has upset people more than anything is that they fell for the story that Nick Smith told them. Nick Smith said publicly that we would get our vote back by the end of 2013. That's this year. Every other region in the whole country will have a right to vote for their regional council. Tragically, half of them don't even take up that opportunity. I guess that's a democratic right as well to not vote, but I personally think it's abuse of the democracy that people before us have fought for. But in Canterbury, we won't be getting that right back for another 3 years. Mr. Chairman, the second point I want to mention is another point that has not been debated a lot in this during the passage of the bill so far, and I think it's one of the most important. We have a form of statutory protection available in New Zealand which is called a water conservation order. We don't have very many, and Fish and Game, Mr. Chairman,
Ruth Dyson.
Fish and Game New Zealand is the body which has really promoted and brought into effect water conservation orders. I know that they have been described in this House in the past. It's like the national parks of waterways. This bill, despite the regulatory impact statement recommending that we get our water conservation orders back again, this bill maintains that special protection for our rivers is gone as well. So it's not just our regional council vote, it's also the special protection that is given through water conservation orders. Let me read part of the regulatory impact statement. It's on page 11, it's paragraph 45. It says the water conservation order processes are set to return to those in the RMA. The special provisions are scheduled to lapse at the expiration of the Act. ECAN has advised it doesn't expect any more amendment applications with respect to the existing Canterbury water conservation orders and is not aware of any new applications for water conservation orders in the Canterbury region. Mr. Chairman, this is the critical bit. This is in the government's own RIS, the regulatory impact statement on this bill. On this basis, the Ministry for the Environment, the Department of Internal Affairs and the Ministry for Primary Industries considers there is insufficient justification for continuing special provisions for water conservation orders in the Canterbury region. The government's own advisers said give back to Canterbury that special protection of water conservation orders, and what did the government do? Advice from 3 separate departments, all singing from the same song sheet. The government just threw it out. I actually feel quite sorry for the incoming Minister, the Honourable Chris Tremaine. Talk about being handed a hospital pass. I don't imagine that Minister has any idea at all of the damage that has been done by this legislation in my electorate and in my region. If he did, I think he would have taken it back to his Cabinet colleagues and said, this is wrong. This is making a liar out of the Honourable Dr. Nick Smith, and most colleagues wouldn't do that. It's denying, throwing out the advice from 3 key ministries in regards to water conservation orders. Mr. Chairman, I just want to conclude my first comments on this legislation by again commending Fish and Game New Zealand. They have done extraordinary work for us. We are very proud of our waterways in Canterbury. We're very concerned about the threat that they are under. We know the degradation that has already been caused by overuse, by inappropriate use. We know that additional take in some of our waterways may be actually fatal to them, and we don't want to see that. We understand the need to support business, of course we do, but some parts of our country can't sustain heavy irrigation and dairy use, and some of our rivers just cannot have any more water taken from them. So our iconic rivers, the Ahuriri, the Rakaia, the Rangitata, and we've got, of course, Lake Ellesmere. These are the waterways that are under threat in our region. They're under threat because this government has chosen to put irrigation ahead of democracy. The members of the Select Committee, when they came to Christchurch, laughed at people who said, you have taken away our right to vote and we want it back. They said, so what? What's the big deal? That was the national members. Why is that a big deal? Why is that, Paul Goldsmith? You'd be better off, frankly, if I may offer you a little bit of advice, not to draw attention to yourself, because you will be better identified as one of the members who laughed at my... He was shocking. Now that he has brought himself to our attention, he was shocking. the people of Canterbury asked for their right to vote back. The national member said, why is taking away your right to vote such a big deal? People in other countries have fought and died for the right to vote. We thought we pretty well had it sussed. We thought it was sort of part of our culture, part of our entitlement, a treasure. Actually, in Canterbury, I think we regard it more highly than anyone, particularly amongst women, because of the women that we've had leading the right for women to vote, and of course the first woman Member of Parliament. That's all we're asking for, is our right to vote.
Call the Honourable Annick King.
Mr. Chairman, this